The country that was supposed to be the next Iran just hosted the entire Western alliance. In February, a former Israeli prime minister stood up at a conference in Jerusalem and declared with complete confidence that Turkey was the new Iran, sophisticated, dangerous, seeking to encircle Israel. That was 5 months ago. This week, the Western Alliance just held its most important annual summit in Turkey, in Ankara, in Erdogan's palace. And the President of the United States sat next to Erdogan, praised him publicly, announced he would lift all sanctions on Turkey, and offered to sell him America's most advanced fighter jet. The new Iran just hosted NATO. Someone needs to explain that. On February 17, former Israeli Prime Minister Naftali Bennett declared at a major conference, Turkey is the new Iran. Erdogan is sophisticated, dangerous, and seeks to encircle Israel. Netanyahu followed with his own warnings. Israeli officials called for Western states to reconsider arms sales to Turkey. Then the Iran war began, and Turkey did something that changed everything. It stayed out of the fight. When Trump launched strikes on Iran in February, Turkey did not join Iran's side despite its anti Israel posture. Instead, alongside Pakistan, Saudi Arabia, and Egypt, Turkey helped mediate ceasefire talks between Washington and Tehran. Trump acknowledged this directly this week. Standing next to Erdogan in Ankara, he said Turkey has been more helpful on Iran than other NATO countries. He praised Erdogan for not getting into the fight on Iran's side. This week, the 36th NATO summit was held in Ankara, July 7th and 8th, at Erdogan's presidential complex. Trump announced the US will lift all sanctions on Turkey imposed since 2020. He expressed willingness to sell Turkey F-35 fighter jets, America's most advanced warplane, and he said without hesitation that Turkey had been much more loyal than other countries he thought would be loyal. Meanwhile, also this week, Trump declared the Iran ceasefire over after renewed exchanges of fire near the Strait of Hormuz and reimposed sanctions on Iranian oil sales. The Iran deal is collapsing, and Turkey, the supposed new Iran, is standing closer to Washington than at any point in years. Erdogan played this perfectly. Let's give credit where it's due. Regardless of your opinion of Erdogan, when the Iran war began, Turkey faced an impossible position. It had spent years cultivating anti Israeli rhetoric domestically. Its population was deeply sympathetic to Iran, and yet Washington was conducting a major military operation on Turkey's border. Erdogan threaded the needle. He maintained his anti Israeli posture publicly, which kept his domestic base satisfied, but he did not join Iran's side militarily. He kept his NATO commitments, and he quietly made himself useful as a mediator. The result? Trump is in his palace this week offering him F 35s and lifting 6-year-old sanctions. That is not the behavior of the new Iran. That is the behavior of a very sophisticated transactional actor who understood exactly what this moment was worth and collected it accordingly. The F-35 decision and what it actually means. Turkey was removed from the F-35 program in 2019 under Trump's first administration because it purchased Russia's S-400 air defense system. This was considered a serious security breach. Other NATO members' F-35s could be compromised by Russian technology operating alongside them. That concern has not gone away. The S-400 still exists and Turkey still has it. And yet, Trump announced this week he would lift the sanction and consider restoring Turkey's access to the F-35. Why? Because Turkey was more helpful on Iran than France, Germany, Italy, and Britain. Allies who declined to join a war they had not been consulted on and considered illegal under international law. This is the logic. Loyalty to Trump's specific decision, not alliance commitments, not shared democratic values, not international law, is now the currency that buys you American weapons and American favor. Israel is watching this in real time and is furious. Netanyahu called Turkey a regime infected by the Muslim Brotherhood and urged Trump not to sell the jets. He said the sale will upset the power balance in the Middle East, which is ultimately guaranteed by Israeli air superiority. Trump appeared unmoved. NATO alliance after Ankara. The summit produced what it needed to on paper. 50 billion in new defense procurements, 70 billion euros pledged to Ukraine, a final declaration reaffirming Article 5 collective defense. But the atmosphere told a different story. Trump publicly shamed France, Germany, Italy, and Britain for not joining the Iran war. He called Spain a wasted cause. He said he might have skipped the summit entirely if it weren't held in Turkey, where my friend happens to be a very strong leader. Read that sentence carefully. The President of the United States almost skipped the most important annual meeting of the Western Alliance, an alliance his country founded and has led for 75, 77 years, because he didn't feel like it. And the only reason he showed up was personal loyalty to one leader. That is not an alliance being led. That is an alliance being tolerated. The Pentagon is promoting what it calls NATO 3.0, a vision where Europe assumes greater responsibility for its own defense, freeing the US to concentrate on other priorities. Translation: Washington is in the process of redefining what its commitment to European security actually means. The allies who refused to join the Iran war are being punished, and the one who played both sides is being rewarded. So was Bennett right? Back to the original question. 5 months ago, I looked at Bennett's claim and found reasons to be skeptical. Not because Turkey poses no challenges, but because the framing was too convenient, the timing too political, and the comparison too imprecise. 5 months later, what does the evidence say? Turkey expanded its regional influence during the Iran war. It consolidated its position as an indispensable mediator. It used the summit to extract sanction relief. S-35 access, and public praise from the world's most powerful man. And it did all of this while maintaining its anti Israeli rhetoric at home. That is not Iran. Iran was an ideological revolutionary state that accepted international isolation as the price of its convictions. Turkey is something more calculated, a country that plays every side simultaneously and keeps getting rewarded for it. Bennett called it a threat. What he failed to name was the mechanism. Turkey is not threatening to destroy the West, it is positioning itself as indispensable to it. That is a very different kind of power, and in some ways, a more durable one. Turkey is not the new Iran. It never was. The comparison was always more useful as a political tool than an analytical one. What Turkey actually is something the West has much less experience dealing with. A country that holds NATO membership and Russian air defense systems simultaneously, that condemns Israel publicly and mediates for Washington privately, that hosts the Western Alliance summit while its leader openly calls for a two-state solution in Palestine. Turkey is not a threat in the way Iran was a threat. It's a mirror. It reflects back to the West exactly what the West's own contradictions look like from the outside. And this week in Ankara, those contradictions were on full display. An alliance that punishes its oldest members for following international law, a president who almost didn't attend his own alliance summit, a country labeled a threat in February, receives America's most advanced fighter jet in July. The world does not run on principles, it runs on positioning. Erdogan understood that, and this week he proved it in front of the entire world. The world is speaking, but most aren't listening.